It's never like it is in the movies, or TV for that matter. Being summoned into another plane of existence takes a long time, takes a lot of power. Hell, with our current level of energy, you're looking at about 3 or 4 nuclear power plants worth of juice just to make this happen, just to make the connection. We're not even counting the properties of yanking something from one plane of existence to another. Not to mention the fact that if you yank something from one area to another, the frequency, the vibrations might be enough to rip them apart as they are just reforming, reconstituting inside your own dimension. That being said, being isekai, as what some people call it, into another world, can really, truly suck. But it can also be very interesting. You see, I was pretty old when they did this, and apparently they have to aim for older individuals, as somehow there's some sort of time dilation that goes in there. I am not understanding any of it at all. This is well over my head, way out there. I am totally flippin' lost when it comes to how this crap works. All I know is I was almost 50 when I started to feel the pull. It was like something was pulling me sideways, almost like a type of gravity field, slowly gnawing at me, slowly pulling me in one direction. Hell, eventually made me start walking funny. But also, I could see it. I could see it ever so slightly forming around me, a strange circle with designs. Slowly, hour by hour, minute by minute, and day by day, it built up. I could slowly feel it. I knew what this was as soon as it started to form, so I knew I had to be ready. I had no idea what I'd be jumping into, so I better be prepared. If there's one thing all my training taught me, is you better have your shit wired tight, or you're in for a world of pain. And boy was I about to be. But I wasn't going to go unprepared. Immediately, I got as much together. I had to go buy a new rucksack. I made sure it was something that was aside from some sort of ACU digicam bullshit. There's no way in hell I'm showing up like that. But I was able to get most of what I had together, something I already had. But again, I had to get a new bag. I stacked a couple of duffel bags too. I figured if I'm being yanked through this portal, I better have as much gear as possible, because I have no idea if they're going to send me back, or I'm going to have to make a life on that side, or if they're just pulling me there so I can be some monster's snack. Who the hell knows? But if you see those lights around you, if you feel it follow you, if you feel something pulling you up or down, and by the way, we found out the hard way that if it's sideways or up, you're in for a bit of pain. Actually, come to think of it, even going feet first, if you're going through hell, tend to be a little, well, shall we say, ouch. It took almost a week for this entire thing to form. During that time, I couldn't tell anybody what the hell I was seeing. Nobody seemed to notice. Nobody seemed to care. Everything just glowed from there. I couldn't sleep. I was very hungry for some reason and thirsty as all hell. But I barely had time to get anything in me as I got everything prepared. I had to go get some sort of weapon that was semi-automatic, magazine fed. A simple lever-action rifle wasn't going to cut it, or a pump-action shotgun. But I knew I had to bring them with me too. Along with that, enough ammo. I didn't know what I was facing, so I had to be prepared. Anybody with any brain cells would do this. And they all do. Any of them that have even the slightest idea of what's coming. Get ready. By the time it finished, I had 2 duffel bags. I had my weapon across my chest, my rucksack attached to my back, and my assault pack on top of that. I reached down and grabbed the 2 duffel bags, and I just started to pray. Oh, I hope this don't turn me into goo. Please don't turn me into goo. I don't want to be goo. Do not splat me against the wall either. Please don't. Oh shit, 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 oh shit. And with that, I suddenly felt myself jolt downwards like I was being pulled through the floor. As I looked down, I could see some sort of opening, but it was like I was looking from a floor to a ceiling. Strange, I know. And suddenly I was yanked full force, feet first, right through the floor, at least if there was a floor. This was like fourth dimensional type shit, well beyond my understanding again. And suddenly, next thing I know, not only am I being shot through this feet first, but I'm flipping around and around, and eventually I landed on my feet but ended up having a crash on the ground as I'm still being spun. What is it with spin? Some physics guy's gotta explain that one to me. I mean, I understand torsion, but geez, this gets old quick. But that wasn't the interesting part, or the super painful part. It was the fact that I wasn't alone. Several other porters from every single area started to launch in my direction. I wasn't even the first one to land. I ended up crashing into one or two people as we landed on the ground. What the heck is going on? At least gravity works, but what the hell? Some lady came flying at me, freaking face first, and crashed into my head. That hurt. As I sat there with my hand on my head, bleeding, I was like, oh, great. Now I gotta use my first aid kit. Good thing I brought one, but we didn't have time for that. Eventually, we saw what seemed like a mixture of some sort of knight run in and start grabbing us and start pulling us out to the side. I grabbed for my duffel bag, but still more and more people came flying through these portals. They seemed to be opening in all different spots on the floor and in the ceiling. They seemed to be, if they come in from the floor, launching out. If they came from the roof, they just dropped straight down and always kept landing on each other. There was about a 20-foot difference, so anybody who wasn't ready for the fall or the hit, well, they were feeling some serious pain. As I was jolted over to the side, I was literally thrown against the wall, and the glowing of this portal was blinding. I couldn't understand what the hell was going on. What the ever-loving shit. As I laid there, still trying to hold on to the duffel bag so I didn't lose track of them, I looked down. Good, I still have my weapon. I looked down to my hips. Yep, I still got my sidearm. Yep, I got everything still here. Whew, that's lucky. That's very lucky. As I looked, I saw others being dragged over as fast as possible. Many of them only had the clothes on their back. One poor bastard looked like he was taking a shower and arrived bare ass. As he slammed into the floor, we heard a crack as he seemed to be launched up from the floor, spun around, and land on his neck. He was done, poor guy. I can only imagine how bad it was for some of them. I looked over and they were all young, very young, teens. The oldest I saw was the late 20s. For some ethnicities, I have a hard time figuring out what their age is, but it wasn't just ethnicity, as there was more than that. There were different species jumping through, but most of these seemed to be exactly what you would think. There was a couple of, I can only figure elves, because they had those funky Vulcan ears, although they seemed to be drug over to a different area besides where I was. I think I had a concussion. I was trying to keep my eyes awake, but it's just, ugh, shaking my head. What the hell is going on? I wasn't nauseous, but I still had to make sure I wasn't bleeding. Thankfully, the hit wasn't nearly as bad as I thought, and I was done. Standing up, I looked around to my left and right, and more people were being dragged off to the side. I looked more at these supposed knights, but they weren't in medieval armor. No, this was more Asian armor. What? Really? Oh boy. This could either be really good or really bad. And before I knew it, I saw the summoning circle begin to break down. Those on the outside that seemed to be holding it together just seemed to stop. One of them fell over, seemingly from exhaustion, and I watched as his body seemed to evaporate like that old guy from the sci-fi movie who got his neck chopped. Suddenly they just weren't there. The clothes were there. That was it. And one by one it seemed to suck them in, and they were just gone. I wouldn't even say vaporized, because there was no vapor at all. They were just gone. Like a mouse fart in the wind, just gone. I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. So I grabbed my duffel bags, got up, and I headed for the closest door, but I was immediately stopped by several of them holding up weapons. I recognize these weapons. These aren't just of Asian design. These are also medieval design. But I looked over and I saw a couple muskets as well. Uh-oh. This could be bad. Those are flintlocks. I may be wearing body armor, but they'll still go through at this range. Those are 50 caliber bullets, at least. If anything, somebody's got a blunderbuss and I'm going to be hit with buckshot. Now what? What do I do? I look around and a few others are motioning for me to come in one direction. I slowly oblige, not sure what the hell is going on. A few others run for the door as fast as they can, or immediately stopped and or tackled to make sure they don't go anywhere. We're all ushered into another room, and I look and some poor girl, I'm guessing maybe 16, 17 years old, is just holding on to what looks like a towel. Really? That's all you got? I looked over at her, and sure enough, she wasn't quite human, as she seemed to be almost reptilian in form. I couldn't figure it out. And then I looked, and she wasn't holding a towel. Those were wings she had pulled around herself to cover herself, and she was crying. She was seemingly scared off her mind. What the hell was going on here? Without too much hesitation, I pulled off the cover of one of my duffel bags, reached in and grabbed a t-shirt. I handed it to her. She looked at me surprised and a little concerned, as though she had never seen me or my kind before. She looked at the cloth, which was rolled up, and she didn't understand what it was, as she gave me a puzzled look. I popped it open and showed to her that it was a shirt. She simply slowly reached out, grabbed a hold of it, felt it in her hand as I let go to see if it was some sort of trick, opened it up to look at it, and then she looked at me and smiled. Another man walked up to me, not wearing anything but some sort of weird shorts or khakis maybe, and said something and motioned to my bag. I was guessing he needed a shirt too, so I reached into my duffel bag, grabbed one, and handed it to him. But I was not the only one who was being asked for things. At least 20 to 25% of us had brought extra equipment, extra gear, some of which I didn't know what the hell I was looking at. It looked similar to mine, but not quite the same. It was almost as though somebody had rushed to the pawn shop and just grabbed a few items, but they had brought a lot. I looked around and I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. I yelled out, "Anybody here speak English?" Nothing. They all just kind of looked at me. A few others yelled out something in a language I didn't understand. And that's when another group of seemingly magic users, because that's the only thing I could figure was magic, started to do some sort of chanting. It sounded like the beginning of Halo for all I knew. And then my head started to hurt. Not from the wound I had just received, but it was like the inside of my brain was trying to push out of my skull. Oh, the pressure. It built more and more and more and more and more, and then suddenly I could understand what they were saying. What in the ever-loving crap? And the pain just dissipated. Just 2 or 3 seconds, it was gone. I looked around. It's like, what the hell? And I could start understanding what others were saying. I looked over to that reptilian-ish girl. She was still human, mostly, that I could tell. I mean, she didn't have a lizard face. She still had a human face, and most of her body was human. I mean, seriously, it was like somebody cut this thing out of one of those weird comic books or one of those stories you guys watch. I didn't understand it. I was like, whatever. So I tried to test it out. I reached my hand out and asked, "Are you okay?" She looked at me with fear as she understood what I said. She saw my hand reaching out, and she just looked and said, "Yes, I'm okay." "Who are you? Where are we?" I looked a little puzzled and then said, "I have no idea." Looking over to her, I closed the duffel bag that I had, and I looked to her and said, "So, can you walk?" She looked and nodded, and she made her way up to her feet. I realized that she actually did have a tail, something I didn't notice beforehand, which seemed to sway back and forth as she walked. It seemed to give her kind of an elegant look, as young as she was. Although, just looking at one that young and thinking weird thoughts, I suddenly felt like the dirtiest old man ever. With that, we heard a voice chant out, "Welcome! You have all been summoned here for a purpose. I understand that many of you are confused at what is going on right now, so let me explain. I am King Erishna. I am the one who controls this land. I control this entire continent. However, there are creatures out there that have decided they wish to destroy this continent and its people by conquering it and taking it over. If they do, everyone here will be slaughtered. We do not have the military strength to take them down, to face them in battle. So we have summoned you all here. You are now our heroes, and you will serve us and protect us. And in return, we shall send you back to your own worlds. And as you can see, this is not yours. I know you can understand me, as our casters have been able to make sure that you understand my words. You will now be evaluated to find out what you all can do and how you will serve. With that, I could actually feel the tension in the air, as several of the guards came out from the edge of the room and began to move towards us with weapons in hand. I stood next to the girl. I looked and she was scared. She was scared shitless. She was shivering. That little bitty shirt I gave her didn't exactly cover everything. It covered her chesticles, but it didn't exactly go down. Her wings got in the way. Though her wings were halfway down her back, she would actually have to hold it down to cover up the rest of the goods. Well, I'm not going to sit here and watch a young girl get hurt. I immediately turned towards her, shoved my duffel bags behind me on either side of her, and then grabbed my weapon. With this, I saw others do the same thing. It was a natural instinct for men to protect the ladies, and I simply looked around at those who did not know what was going on. I said, "Set up a perimeter." They all looked at me strange. Who was I to be yelling out orders? With this, they looked over and they saw that many of the women were, in fact, scared out of their mind, and again, the natural instinct of man took over, and they all started to face out. "Do not be concerned. Those guards are only here to bring you to the evaluation." He motioned his hand over to an area that I could barely see. "This will show us what you are gifted with. You have all been gifted with your truest potential, that in which you desire the most. You already have it. You cannot change it. It is part of you, but we need to know. Please, come over." The guards continued to move up, but you could see that everyone was still getting more and more tense as these men had weapons in their hands and armor. Some of them held flintlock muskets, which made a bunch of us very, very nervous, as we knew exactly what it was. I got ready to draw up. "Guards, calm yourselves and back away. You are making our guests nervous." And with that, the guards stopped approaching and began to back up. Their strange lacquer armor made me wonder if they really were as good as they thought they were. Though they had some sort of firearms, I'm sure even that would be enough to stop a bullet, especially at about 50 to 100 meters or better. It was going to hurt like hell, but it was nothing compared to the piercing rounds that were inside my weapon right now, or any of the weapons I still had inside those bags. I looked around and everyone seemed to calm down a little bit more. As I put the safety back on my weapon, I reached down to the young lizard girl, which I guess you could say was a dragon, which would be confirmed later. She reached up, grabbed my hand, and pulled herself towards me, but she then realized she was exposed and curled herself up again. She tried to cover herself with her tail, but obviously shoving her tail between her legs would make it impossible to walk. I again flipped off my rucksack and ran through inside, and I grabbed a simple poncho liner and I wrapped it around her like a blanket. She seemed to like this as she grinned at me and just gave me a simple "thank you." Why was someone this young here? I looked around and again confirmed that everyone was young. Why in the ever-loving crap would they bring kids here? This didn't make sense. But then I started looking at those that were still holding a type of defensive posture. No, these guys got training. Something's amiss. Something is very much amiss here. With that, we all lined up, and the testing area was a situation where, well, you simply stand on the platform, and four, I guess, crystal balls or crystalline, some sort of material, but it was definitely something you could see through. They would simply begin to glow, and then another one of these, almost like clerics you could say, simply stood there, holding some sort of tablet. It seemed like a piece of rock, really. I couldn't see the other side. And then it would say what you could do, what you were good at. Eventually, we got in line. I continued to drag my duffel bags as heavy as they were. I started to regret actually carrying this much gear. Wished I had something that could actually carry them. And then I suddenly wanted to slap myself upside the back of the head for not realizing I could have set something up. I could have actually ordered something and had it rushed to me, but dang it. It didn't matter at that point. Right now, we just got ready. The guards still stayed back, but they began to look at us with some sort of strange, I don't know if you would call it hate or concern or what, but they were definitely on edge. As we made our way forward, I looked at the different types of folks who were here. They were not all human. There was the young dragon girl who was right next to me. There was another one, seemed like a young man. And then I looked over an even younger dragon girl. What? Seriously? Exactly how many came through those damn portals? Then I looked over and there was actually, I didn't know if they were feline or fox. Considering the tail, I'd say half and half. But their ears all stuck up. It was strange to see what I was seeing. I remember hearing one guy actually whisper "Kitsune" as he waved towards one of them. The girl seemed to realize this as her ears perked up and turned towards us. And I was like, what? Hold on a sec. Are you by any chance? Yeah, I am. Oh, so you would know about the foxy lady right here. He seemed to grin at that. She looked a little confused at that, and she came over as apparently being called a fox was something she found offensive. I told her, relax, Zorro. In my culture, calling a girl a foxy lady is calling someone a beautiful, refined woman. She seemed to relax on that as we slowly made our way towards the platform. As I worked my way up, I could see that I had to drop some of my bags first. I didn't care. It was getting heavy anyway. But I kept my weapons on me. No way in hell I'm leaving without those. I walked my way up to the platform as I had to make sure that my new dragon girl friend would let go of my arm as she was still seemingly scared of what was going on. I walked up to the platform and it began to glow a strange color. I looked at one of the orbs and it seemed to have some sort of rainbow kind of look as it was seemingly trying to figure out what in the hell was inside me. Whatever these guys had planted. But I didn't really have time for it. One of them looked and all of a sudden a gasp. And they ran over to the ruler and showed what was on that stone tablet, which made his eyes very wide, very quickly, and I wondered, oh shit, what did I step in, as I reach for the pistol grip on my weapon.